Hello, welcome to VEDO Day 22. Today is kind of exciting because I am shooting a day in the life video. It's a series of multiple videos, and it's going to be really, really long. So I think I'm going to divide it into like 3 different videos, but it's getting done today, and you'll see it soon. And I am very detailed, apparently. I think I'm recording way too much about my life, but it should be fun to see, I guess. So that you can look forward to watching that. Well, I want to continue why we decided to have a home birth, and I'm a little more organized today, so we'll see how it goes. Let's see. Oh, so last video I talked about how I always wanted to do it, and then I said it was a challenge and a dream of mine. But then I also said I didn't want to do it, but my options were limited, so I just went for it because I didn't have many options. Well, like, those are conflicting, so which one's true? Well, they're both true. Like, I mean, yeah, like, the first time I heard of a home birth, I was intrigued. It wasn't really something I really, really, really wanted to do, but I definitely really, really wanted to do to experience childbirth without an epidural, like I talked about in the last video. So definitely wanted to do that, and felt like it wasn't possible in the hospital, like I talked about in the last video too. But also I didn't want to do it, but I felt like my options were limited. So those are both kind of true. I didn't want to do it because, just fear of the unknown, and nobody does it. It's like I think 2% in America. Like, that's really low. So nobody does home births. So yeah, it seems like a risk in some ways, and I come from a medical background, so I wanted to research everything, and I did. So that was good and bad. I mean, I definitely had some anxiety going into it, and I had to pray a lot. We chose not to tell very many people, because we figured that the reaction would be negative and wouldn't be supportive. And I think that was good. I mean, near the end, there are a few people that ended up knowing, for the purpose of prayer, really. And I went so over that I just, I needed some prayer, and I told a few people. But yeah, for the most part, we kept it under wraps. So yeah, the the anxiety that I had and researching things, I wanted to share some of that with you, because of my medical background. I really just wanted to look everything up and figure out how the midwives deal with it versus how the medical world deals with it, and if I was comfortable with how midwives deal with said problem. So the first thing there with home births, there are things that go wrong after the birth that are related to birth defects, like heart defects or brain or lung, like major things, and the baby will need to be transferred immediately, and the outcome usually isn't good. That happens because they don't know about the birth defects, because they don't get ultrasounds. Most women who do a home birth, they start with the midwife from the very beginning, and they never get an ultrasound. So I felt comfortable because I had gotten the 20-week ultrasound already. I knew that there weren't any birth defects, so I felt like that was a non-issue for me. Freak accidents, those would be like cord prolapse, which is when the cord comes down below the baby's head, and then the baby's head like mushes it, like cuts off circulation, and then the baby has no oxygen, which is a major emergency. That is something that can happen when the mom's water breaks, and that would happen at home or at a grocery store or at a restaurant, like no matter if you're having home birth or not, and you would go to the emergency room immediately. Even if you were having a home birth, you would not. I mean, yeah, you need an emergent C-section for that one. So obviously that's what I would do in that case. Nuchal cord, when the cord's just around the neck, like numerous times, usually the doctor or midwife slips the cord off, and if the baby's been deprived of oxygen for some reason, the midwife has O2. In the hospital, they would do something similar. If the baby was really struggling, they would intubate if the baby wasn't breathing at all, and midwives can't do that, but that's pretty rare. They usually start breathing and then they just kind of struggle with their breathing and they need some extra O2. Breech baby, that's another instant my freak accident category. That's something that can be determined before labor, and I think it can be determined even better by a midwife. I think that they're better at feeling for position and listening to heart tones. I just think they have really good experience with that. And I mean, any good OB should be able to tell if your baby's breech. Meconium aspiration. This was something that I definitely took issue with. Judah had meconium. He passed meconium, and it was in my waters. So when they broke my water at the hospital, he had meconium in the water, and of course they had the neonatal nurse practitioner come, but she didn't do anything. I mean, he was fine. So usually if they aspirate, that's the problem, is if they aspirate on the meconium, and if they aspirate in utero, like in the belly, you can tell by the Doppler, by listening, by the heart tones. The midwives use the Doppler intermittently. At hospital, you'd be on a monitor continuously, but midwives with the Doppler would be able to tell if the heart tones were dropping, and we would transfer. Because that's such a bad outcome, meconium babies I've seen in the NICU, full-term babies that had meconium aspiration, Joel and I decided that if my water broke and I did have meconium in it, that even if there weren't problems with the baby at all, that we would just go to the hospital, which is hard for me to say because I know my midwife probably would have been like, everything's fine, like, what are you doing, but that's a big risk. Like, bad things can happen if they aspirate on meconium, so we decided to do that. What else? Respiratory problems with the baby afterwards. Like I said, the midwife has oxygen, O2, and if there are bad issues, we could transfer. And maternal hemorrhage, that seems to happen. I don't know. That's like, I don't know. It's one of the more common things, I think, in a way. Maternal hemorrhage, just that the mom's bleeding too much after birth, transfer after would be fine for me. I mean, I don't even, I mean, it was all, when I did all my research, it was more about, like, looking at the baby, if there was risk to the baby. I didn't really care about myself. So, ultimately, I felt pretty good about most of these situations. I shared with you the ones that I was concerned about, and as I talked to some midwives and some people that had done home births, they shared with me a British Medical Journal article. It's about home births in, let's see, let me read the title. It is The Outcomes of Planned Home Births with Certified Professional Midwives, Large Prospective Study in North America. And the outcomes were that home births were associated with the same mortality numbers and less medical interventions. So that's a good thing. Same number of infant mortality, but less medical interventions, which in my mind yields healthier babies when you have less medical interventions. There's a lot of medical interventions that are bad for the baby. You hear about, I mean, you always hear, I'm sure you've heard about the home birth gone wrong and all that, but what about all the hospital births gone wrong? I mean, there's tons. I mean, especially the failed induction turn C-section. Like, that is just a story I hear all the time, like, especially with first-time moms. It's so sad. Like, they don't go into labor by 40 weeks, so they schedule an induction, they get the Pitocin, they get the epidural, they're flat on their back, they've been doing it for so long that the baby's heart rate starts dropping, or the pushing takes too long, and so they have to have a C-section. And it's just sad. I mean, the interventions that really, in a lot, I mean, I think that we could wait, I think we don't need to be inducing all the time. Pitocin really, really is hard on the baby. Like, the contractions are harder, their oxygen levels go down. Like, it's hard on the baby, it's hard on the mom. It's not regular Pitocin from the mom's body. It's a synthetic, like it's a drug. So it's not good. Epidural has risks too, lots of risks. Ultimately, what I wanted to experience, I wanted to experience the pain, but I also had read about the hormones there's a hormonal bond between, I don't know if it has to do with the oxytocin from the mom or what, but there's a bond between mom and baby that when you have an epidural, everything's dulled and blocked. Like, the pain receptors and the hormone, everything's a little bit like not as functional in that area, which helps because you don't feel the pain. But as far as the hormonal bond that happens, it's definitely dulled. And so I wondered if that was true. That wasn't like hugely important to me, but I wanted to experience that if it was true. What else? I talked to you about Stadol and Nubane and how those make the heart rate drop. The monitors, like, sometimes the monitoring is so crazy that it makes the mom so uncomfortable. She has to sit down for a certain amount of time so they can get the monitor and get a good reading. And because she's sitting down, she's in pain. And because she's in that much pain, she decides to get an epidural. Whereas if they just, let the mom walk around a little bit more, then maybe she wouldn't need the epidural. But like I said, when you're at the hospital, it's almost bound to happen. I am just amazed at the moms who go to the hospital and don't get an epidural. I don't know how that's done. I mean, people think when they see me or talk to me, oh my goodness, you had a home birth. That's crazy. How did you do that? Well, if I was at a hospital, I would have gotten an epidural for sure. 100%. Like, it was hard. It was really rough. So I would have definitely gotten an epidural if I was at a hospital. So I don't know how moms do that. But anyway, so there's a lot of medical interventions that I think are unnecessary. Sometimes they're necessary, and praise God that we can do C-sections and get the babies out of there and work on them. But a lot of the times, I think they're unnecessary. And so that's why I didn't want to go the hospital route and wanted to do the home birth route. And we also talked about if there are any decelerations, any late decelerations after contraction, the baby's heart rate went down, that we would also go to the hospital for that. And so, yeah, those are the main reasons why we decided to have a home birth. And then we had to look for a midwife, and I didn't know that there is quite the range of midwives. Some of them are like pagan, and I don't mean like Wiccan or anything. Just they worship the body, they worship the earth, all about like positive energy and stuff. And so I did not want a midwife like that. And there's a lot of them. And then there's Christian. So you have like a full spectrum, and it took us a while to find a good midwife. I was 30 weeks when I decided to have a home birth and start interviewing midwives, and so I was a late patient to take on, and so that was an issue because a lot of them are booked, already have quite a few home births in the month of April. And then a lot of them I found out I didn't gel with. I wanted a Christian, and so that was definitely important to me. And so, yeah, it took a while, but I think by the fourth midwife that that I talked to, she came over, and it turned out that she was actually the only one available that month too, and she was a Christian, and she came over and we talked to her about everything, and Joel really loved her. I mean, she had this personality, this spirit that was just so laid back and cool, and she was just awesome, just an awesome lady. And right when she left, Joel turned around, closed the door, turned around and said, "I feel so much better about this whole home birth thing." And I was just like, praise God, I do too, like, awesome. So we just felt so much better once we met her, and we were excited to embark on the journey of home birth. And so I will share that story with you, the actual home birth and how it went, later. I don't know when, but I will do it. Thanks for watching.